And we are live. Hola, cage fighting connoisseurs. This is KidNativeBloodyElbow.com, joined for the first time by the one, the only. Let me tell you about that guy, Dallas Winston, fresh from a brutal night of tweet reading for Bloody Elbow about the UFC Fight Night Albuquerque, aka UFC Fight Night 41, aka UFC Fight Night 42, aka UFC Fight Night Henderson versus Khabilov. Overall thoughts on the show. It was a shit show, Dallas. I don't even have to let you talk. It was a shit show. What, other than the headliner, what a fiasco. Okay, now you can talk.
I don't know if it's just a phase because I'm always like the positive rah-rah guy, but maybe I'm just losing. Maybe MMA is just getting kind of stupid.
The UFC is working hard to kill any interest in their product, man. I mean, they're just putting too much of it out there, and it's not a very good quality.
I agree, and you know, a weird kind of correlation is Bellator put on probably the worst card they've ever put on since they even got onto Spike. It was even worse than talent-wise, lineup-wise, because Kern and Pitbull got canceled. But actually, the way they treated it, they kind of made light of it with some of those promos, and that was refreshing. And I agree with everything you said about the UFC, but the fact that it's always the top guy and the number one ranked guy, well, it's really the number one ranked guy in the just like all that shit is getting tired. The Sanchez decision was atrocious.
I mean, you still love Lincoln Park, right?
Jeez, man.
I know.
And
like
people complained
nobody
about
even
the
liked
Gladiator.
Lincoln Park 10 years ago.
Like, I was always down with the Gladiator intro, and people hated on that. And now, I mean, I'd take that over Lincoln Park.
Oh yeah, easily. But let's run through the card quickly. First off, quick talk about the headliner. I thought that was a really good fight, though. That was totally UFC caliber. That was serious business. Benson Henderson showed a game and skilled Rustam Khabilov that, dude, you're not quite ready for the top 10 in the UFC. Like, Benson Henderson is a serious bad dude, and he showed it tonight.
Yeah, I think he's proven that for sure. And I was kind of the different way. I picked Bendo because although Rustam's been really impressive, I didn't quite think he was at Bendo's level. So I kind of looked at it as he was pretty impressive tonight.
He was game, man. He was skilled. He's got a few moves. He just has a limited striking arsenal, and he didn't have a plan B for Bendo scrambling. I mean, when you can get takedown after takedown the way Khabilov can, and then keep finding yourself either on the defensive inside Henderson's guard, or in immediately put on your back or have your back taken, like that sit out that Bendo did. My God, that was just brutal, But definitely Khabilov. I mean, he hurt him with some punches. He got deep penetration on some sweet takedowns. He threatened the suplex. He didn't get it, but very impressive performance from a guy. I mean, he's got a lot of experience in fights, but at high level UFC fights, quite inexperienced. First time headlining a card, and going up against somebody like Benson Henderson, who's been in title fight after title fight after title fight, both in the WEC and the UFC. It's just a big step up, and I think it's a learning experience for Khabilov, and I hope to see him come back stronger. And I've knocked on Bendo, and I've knocked on Bendo, but he did it tonight. He went out there and he fought to finish, and he got his finish. So the proverbial hat is off. Did you see the light shine off my bald head from the blender?
Yep.
That was.
But it's not proverbial when you actually grab the hat on your head.
The literal. How about that?
There you go.
How about that? So
yeah, it was a good fight. For some reason, I was still a little bitter, and even though I saw the Sanchez bad, shitty split decision coming, and even when he threw that sloppy ass flurry at the end of round one, I said we're all going to talk about this flurry when this turns into a controversial. So I was still a little bitter about that. Bendo did a good job of defending that belly to back suplex when Khabilov had the rear waist cinch, but Bendo was going out of his way painstakingly not to grab the fence, and even when he had a closed fist and put his hand anywhere near the fence, Yamasaki yelled at him for it, and he took his hand off. So I was just more focused on Yamasaki kind of pissed me off all night. The refs were kind of bad.
The refs were really bad. Yamasaki wasn't the worst. I thought Mulhall was bad, but also not the worst. What's the dude's name? Raul Parada was terrible tonight.
Yeah,
Um,
he looked a little shaky on the very first fight of the night, and then when he had his bigger fuck up, a couple people tweeted back, and it turns out it sounds like he has a history of
yeah,
bad, just not being competent, highly competent. So
yeah. But we'll get the. Let's run through them quickly though. The first fight, Patrick Cummins beat Roger Narvaez. Not much to say about that. Cummins made it look easy. Narvaez just didn't have the wrestling. Might have been hurt. Anything to add to that one?
no,
Nah, me neither. I definitely say that's one you can skip. I mean, I think Cummins is probably marginal bottom of the lightweight, light heavyweight division. Then John Tuck defeated Jake Lindsay by TKO. This was some terrible reffing by Prada. I did like that Lindsay's nickname is the Librarian. But he tapped to a heel kick to the floating rib, which I'm told is incredibly painful, and I have no doubt it was. But I can't even remember what Parada did in that fight that was terrible, but it was terrible. Take my word for it. Do you remember?
no. So I will take your word for it.
Yeah, you'll have to. But I can't remember. Oh, it was a quick stand-up, I believe. It was an incredibly quick stand-up when Tuck was in a pretty dominant position and looking to advance. That's what it was. But
Yeah,
that
and
was
it's
just
even before that. As soon as they hit the ground, like a couple seconds into it, the ref was barking at him. Come on, you got to work. A ref's job is to make sure there are no fouls and to warn if someone does something that is a foul or borderline to it. That's it. They're not in charge of making the fight exciting or pushing the action. So all that shit was really annoying.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there is a place for refs doing restarts if there is flagrant stalling, but they're not supposed to preclude a grinding advance or anything like that. Like as long as guys are making progress, the referee should keep his mouth shut and stay out of it. Then Scott Jorgensen and Danny Martinez. Jorgensen took a unanimous decision. I thought this was a good fight. This one. This was a good one, I thought. Really back and forth. Martinez definitely had the edge standing, but Jorgensen's takedowns were able to overcome that advantage. And lots of momentum reversals. This is one fight I would check out. If you miss the card,
It
I
was a
would go
good
back.
fight. I actually thought Martinez won the fight.
Really,
Well,
I
yeah.
could see that. He hurt him. I think he got more damage. Jorgensen had more control, probably.
In two of the three rounds, he slaughtered him on the feet enough where Scotty was on roller skates and in survival mode. And then in the third round, he did that all the way up until exactly the halfway point. Then there was 30 seconds of kind of equality, and then Jorgensen got on top, landed a few punches, and took him down. To me, that's just one of those things. I don't even get. No one said shit about it. I thought it was a pretty clear win for Martinez, actually.
I could see that, but UFC fans are so conditioned to give the guy who spent more time in top position the decision. I don't think anybody, and there was many more atrocities to come. Then, speaking of atrocities, Zach Henry defeated Bobby Volker. This was a dismal, terrible fight, man. They gassed early. I realize it's high altitude. I've been to Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's high altitude. It's very exhausting. But Bobby Volker, man, this is his fourth straight loss in the UFC. It's just time to admit it. This cat, tough dude, gritty guy. I'm sure he's a great guy. Not UFC caliber fighter though. Not somebody I want to spend my Saturday night watching fight.
Well, he might be. He's very simplified. I mean, he comes forward, he throws his hands, he walks forward in a straight line at the same speed until the fight is over, the round is over. So there's just not a lot. And you're right. I mean, he's definitely a real gritty, tough guy, but I mean, that's what he's going to do in a fight is come forward and throw his hands and keep coming in a straight line and throwing his hands. So after three losses, you'd think you'd want to do that really, a ton better or try something else, I suppose.
Yeah, he's 35. I just don't see it happening for him. I mean, any development we're going to see, we've seen. It's just they're in a position where they don't want to cut anybody because not only is Bellator they're nipping at their heels, World Series of Fighting is nipping at their heels, and they've got all these ridiculous fight cards to fill out, and they're putting guys like Bobby Volker on Fox Sports One, which to me is a little crazy. That brings us to the headliner of the Fox Sports One prelims, which is I think it's silly that they have two back-to-back shows on the same network. and are calling the prelims in the main card. But anyway, it's just like an endless sea of UFC is what it is. Sergio Pettis, the highly touted Sergio Pettis, got back in the win column with a decision over Yatsen Meza. Couple of flashes of slickness from Pettis, but I found this one incredibly tedious as well.
Yeah, it was not good, and it might be because we have a little bit of higher expectations for Sergio Pettis.
It's true.
I
Younger
think
brother of the lightweight champ, and
yeah, I think the entire first he needed to pick up a win, and it looked to me like he was trying to be very methodical and like surgical and no bullshit, just land strikes. He threw that one cartwheel kick, capoeira kick at the end of round one. It really wasn't as good as we expected, nor the kind of blow your hair back based on any fight. But I'm not going to fault Sergio. He's got a lot of hype, a lot of pressure, and people hate you and think you suck if you lose and you're overhyped. So I don't blame the cat for doing whatever to pick up a win.
no, I don't either, but I'm not going to pretend I enjoyed watching the fight either. And now we get to the main card, and the shit show starts with bantamweight Brian Caraway getting a submission over Eric Perez. Did he tap to the fish hook? It was officially a fish hook? Was that the official call?
Obviously I didn't see that until the pictures popped back up, on Twitter and everything. But man, that based on the pick, that looks about as blatant as you can get. That's a full 2-finger, fish hook. And that, I don't know.
I mean, Eric Everhard would be embarrassed about that fish hook, man.
That is one of the most effective. Like back when you were getting shit faced with your buddies, and I don't know about you, but we would always just be, just end up just beating the crap out of each other. But I'm telling you, that fish hook, I subdued a gentleman for a good 2-3 minutes, and he still hates me for it.
Yes,
but I would like to see the replay because did you notice it live?
I did not. I actually, my notes say nice submission. Like that's what that's, and then 5 minutes later, the still shots show up that that there was fish hooking going on, and I mean that was fish hooking's been banned since Tank Abbott and UFC. I don't know what 9, 8. I don't know when Tank.
No, I don't think that was ever allowed. Fish hooking?
No, it was. I mean, the first, after from 2 on, there was a run where the only rules were no eye gouging, no biting, and they even allowed groin strikes. I mean, that was it. No eye gouging, no biting. That was it. So fish hooking was legal, but then they saw it in action and said, no, we don't want to have anything to do with this. Because honestly, you could tear somebody's cheek. It's not that.
How do you do it?
Okay. And if you're in a romantic, you do that.
Well, I would allow fish hooking only if you can bite, because that's your counter right there.
Exactly.
It's totally unfair to the fish hooker or to the biter if you're going to allow one and disallow the other. So.
It's very true. So anyway, Brian Caraway continues to reinforce his bad reputation with the fans. But otherwise, it was a pretty good fight. I mean,
good. It was a good fight, and Caraway did exactly what he needed to do to win. So that's too bad. That's obviously
Perez out of his game, and
solid win for Caraway, but it's no one's going to remember that.
No, everybody's going to be talking about the fish hooking. And now, even more bullshit. Peter Hallman submitted Yves Edwards in the 3rd round after multiple bullshit eye pokes. Mario Yamasaki just sat there and let Hallman get away with, I felt like, pretty flagrant. I mean, Yves even poked him back.
That did seem like a retaliatory.
It was clearly a retaliatory. Why are they insisting that these are never on purpose? I mean, they're fucking grown men that are out there in control of their bodies, sticking their fingers in each other's eyes on purpose. Let's call a spade, please.
Brent Brookhouse and I were kind of like semi-arguing because the week before in one of those 2 events that kind of blurred together, the ref warned someone for continually outstretching his arms into his opponent's face with his fingers out, both hands. And I said, hey, that's a great move, because that way when he does get poked in the eye, you can't say, oh my God, it's just a freak accident. But Brookhouse, and he has a legit point, it was you can't warn the fighters for things that aren't a foul. And it doesn't justify it, but my point was kind of what I was saying before, is we already do that for strikes to the back of the head, or when a guy grabs the fence, they bark instructions when it's not a foul, and the guy will quick jerk his hand away. So shit, if we're going to do that, I mean, eye pokes would benefit the most.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really disheartening to see somebody like Yves Edwards, who's a legend of the sport, never never really even had a chance to fight for the UFC title because they took away the lightweight belt when he was at his peak. And you can't say that he would have been the UFC lightweight champion, but it's highly likely that he would have.
He's
And
the uncrowned UFC lightweight champ before they dissolved the lightweight class for sure.
yeah, and it's just a drag that they it just sucks to see Eves go out like that. Against a guy that in his heyday I don't think he would have struggled with one bit. So
the last time he was submitted, he's been submitted, I think that was like the fourth or fifth time in his career. He's got like 62 fights. The last time he was submitted was UFC 58 when Hamid placed that triangle up. And the only other cats to submit him are like, Nate Marquardt, long-time middleweight, the great Rumi Sato. Honestly, I don't want to be hard on Eves, but it kind of looked like he gave up a little. Like,
after you've been poked in the eye that many times and nothing is done about it, I mean, you're old, you're in Albuquerque, you got to be thinking, what the fuck am I doing here?
Yeah, that combo is always, if you're old in Albuquerque, the first question is, what the fuck am I doing? But actually, Hallman, that's a pretty impressive performance by that kid because he's really young. I don't know, like early, mid-20s. I checked his record before he debuted in the UFC, and it was all guys on like the European scene. So for him to dive into this extreme level of new and fierce competition and do as well as he did, I mean, regardless of the eye pokes, he was standing up and holding his own with Eves, who's like a master sensei on the feet at this point. So
yeah, I don't want to completely destroy Hallman for that. It was just a bummer. But then that brings us to another bummer. Rafael Dos Anjos defeated Jason High, and I'm totally biased. I love Jason High. Cool cat on Twitter. I liked Dos Anjos too, though, and it was looking like it was shaping up to be a really good fight. I do think that RDA was pulling ahead because he was catching Jason with some just real sharp punches, hooks. I think left hands that were just cracking him. But when the stoppage happened, there were like 4 shots to the back of the head that were flagrantly illegal. Jason's working for a sweep. He's and Mulhall stops the fight. Apparently, Jason, they didn't show it on TV, but people that were in the arena were tweeting that High shoved Mulhall.
They showed that on one of the replays.
Yeah, so
on TV.
Just terrible decision making there on High's part. Hard to blame him for being pissed off, but you just never, ever, ever do that. That you're never going to win. It's like the old, you never win a race with a train. Like if you're in a car, you don't try to beat the train at the railroad crossing. If you're a fighter, you don't try to fight with the ref. Like no matter what he does.
It's like a night where bad reactions are going to overshadow the original problem. So. Yeah, High was totally wrong for that, but I did think the stoppage was poor. When you're going for deep half guard, I think refs mistakenly see that you're not shell blocking or covering up. You're reaching with one hand, in between for deep half guard. And I think maybe Mulhall mistook that as, I don't know, unintelligent defense. But
yeah, I think he thought he was just holding on for dear life and not recognizing that he was actually trying to reverse the position. He was hurt, but before he dropped, I mean, that's what dropped him, and and he did just take like 6 straight shots to the back of the head. So I doubt he was in that great a shape. But frustrating, a good matchup. Both guys showed a lot of skill.
Before you move on real quick, I just got to say there's a lot of shit in MMA that's going to keep going on unless something happens, like with the eye pokes. But historically, back of the shot heads we've just allowed when they're in the finishing sequence. Like
there was that weird period where suddenly like they disqualified Eric Silver for it.
That was Yamasaki, the guy who will warn. The penalty for grabbing the fence and everything else is just continuous warnings of a harsher tone as they increase. And then the one time Eric Silva does that, he goes all the way to the opposite end of the spectrum and just takes the whole fight away from him. So let's find some gray area, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that was, it is what it is. But let's move on. Flyweights, John Dodson and John Moraga. Now, this was a good fight. I'm a huge John Dodson fan. This did nothing to dispel that. Again, I got to apologize for John Moraga. I confused him with John Lineker all the way through the Care Don't Care previews. Totally egregious, inexcusable error on my part. But I was right that Moraga did not have the speed to hang with Dodson, and his game is all about putting his weight down and throwing a lot of power punches. You can't do that with somebody as fast as John Dodson. And my God, those double left hands Dodson was cracking him with.
Was it me or did Dodson start a little bit complacent in this fight?
I don't know. I mean, it wasn't instant action, but I think with somebody with power like Moraga, I think he was trying to feel him out and establish his range and see if he was fast. I mean, I thought Moraga's movement was pretty good, and he was able to connect with Dodson a few times. Um, he wasn't able to connect and sit down on his punches, but that final knee, man. I mean, who cares about the beginning of the fight? Dodson splattered his nose, just kneed him in the face. The break didn't actually, or the cut didn't actually. I was kind of questioning the doctor stoppage, but it
So was Moraga.
yeah, at least he had learned from Jason Hyde's mistake and didn't attack the ref. But but I was just very impressed with Dodson. I look forward to him getting another shot at I believe Demetrius Johnson is going to still be the champion.
And I hate to waste a contender, but I really want to see Dodson fight Benavidez, man.
I want to see all these flyweights fight each other. But I think yeah, fuck it. Let's let Dodson have one more fight before. I don't know. It depends who they need for a title fight. I can't believe they're headlining a pay-per-view with the flyweight title anyway. But it is what it is. They're hell bent on doing 85 events a year or whatever it is. But now that brings us to the worst decision of the year. Guaranteed, this is a lock for the worst decision of 2014. Diego Sanchez split decision over Ross Pearson in a fight that what did you say? 11 out of 12 media people scoring the fight ruled a 30-27 for Pearson. Like,
Yep. In the 12th, who was doing play-by-play for Bloody Elbow tonight?
that was Tim Burke.
They had it listed on MMA Decisions as like Chase Raymond, but that was 29-28 still for Pearson. So 11 of 12 media judges had it 30-27, and one had it 29-28 for Pearson.
And yet one of the judges scored at 30-27 for Sanchez.
I mean, it was the same Diego Sanchez fight we've always seen. He comes
Except
out,
slower
he's back,
and worse. I mean, I was literally going, man, I used to love to watch Diego fight, and now I feel sorry for him. Like, I just thought it was a total display of complete ineptitude and helplessness, and he gets rewarded for this. I was just,
Yep.
yeah.
Same thing at every fight. He's he's back, he's pissed off. He makes a mean face. He gets punched 10 times and then waves the guy in and raises his arms and throws a bunch of sloppy shit and wins a fight based on the illusion of aggression.
Well, at least in some of the fights that were controversial, I'm thinking of the
Campman?
yeah, the Campman fight. I mean, he busted Campman's face up. I mean,
Yeah, and he wobbled him. He wobbled him at the end.
There were, I mean, he actually inflicted. He never hurt Pearson. I mean, he tagged him a couple times enough to bloody him up a little bit. But Pearson's a bit of a bleeder. But I mean, he never hurt Pearson once.
This is one of the all-time worst decisions. Screw this year. This is right up there with some of the worst decisions ever. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad because the first time I wasn't even really that upset about it. It's just like kind of the same old bullshit, really.
Yeah,
It's really frustrating. Like, I mean, I'm being really kind of grumpy and cynical right now, but I don't know. I guess anyone who's watching this now or ends up watching, let us know, because I'm just in the past couple of weeks just getting kind of sick of fucking MMA. I think it might be, uncoincidentally, with the UFC's orgasm of events all over my TV in the last couple of weeks, but I don't know. Shit's just getting old. Sorry.
Yeah, it's getting real old, and I'm I mean, this is our living, and we make it. We're completely parasitic on the UFC, and if these idiots drive the sport into the ground, and the thing about overexposure is, the line will be and then just drop off the
Yeah.
table, you know,
And maybe I should I
because like
qualify my
the
statement. I'm more sick of Ultimate Fighting than I am of MMA.
yeah, I enjoyed the hell out of the Bellator pay-per-view, and the Bellator last night. I mean, it was fun to see Sukaju and Thompson get some wins, and there wasn't any big expectations. They weren't playing Lincoln Park and saying this is the baddest. It was just like, hey, it's some dudes fighting, and
Yeah, they were realistic about it, and that was refreshing.
yeah, I mean, like, and what we saw last week with the ratings for that Tough Brazil 3 finale, where there were 600,000 people watching the prelims and 600,000 people watching the main card, which tells you that the main card added nothing, and they had that 600,000 hell or high water hardcores, and they're wearing those hardcores out, man. They're riding us
Because
like
they're
horses.
marketing to the casual fans. That's the thing. The only people tuning in to this often are the hardcores, but they're marketing it all to like the first time Just Bleed guys. That's the
Yeah,
problem. And
that's
I just want to comment real quick. Even if MMA does start to suck, I really will not mind because everyone will say for their job it's not the greatest. Sometimes it's going to suck. I more consider myself really lucky. I'm realizing now when I was really fucking excited and passionate about breaking down a card and watching it all unfold. So, for whatever that's worth, it's just a normal job now, maybe.
yeah, that's the nature of life. Be careful what you wish for. It's much better than doing politics, I'll tell you that. At least I don't feel like uh, there's nothing like helping somebody get elected to office and then going, oh my God, what have I done?
God,
Anyway,
you
you
just
know,
supported Emperor Palpatine. Sith
yeah,
Lord.
not more like the Spaceballs version of Emperor Palpatine. But anyway, so somewhat redeemed by the main event, but actually I look at more like the main event was diminished by being on this card. I mean, you had a couple, hell, you know, out of the six main card fights, I'd say one, two, three, four of them were pretty good. Three of them were of significance. But with the reffing and the judging and the marketing, it's just the overall, gotta go. Dave Chappelle's Rick James. I wish I had, more hands so I could give this card more thumbs down. It's disheartening and disappointing, and I'm not looking forward to UFC 174 in the least bit.
Did Dave Chappelle ever in the Rick James skit do something with thumbs down, or were you just kind of?
He goes, yeah, when Charlie Murphy walks in the bar right before he punches him with the ring, he goes,
That's five fingers to the face, bitch. That's not a
no,
thumbs
no. When
down.
he goes, some girl shows him his titties, and he goes, I wish I had four hands so I could give
Yeah,
those
that's
titties
right.
four
That's
thumbs
right. Yeah,
down.
that's right.
So there.
It was overshadowed by the pimp slap. My bad.
Yes, yes. So anyway,
Who's UFC 174?
that's the flyweight title fight. They're asking people to pay $55 for the flyweight title fight. It's crazy. It's just fucking crazy. And I think Donson versus Bagatinov. I mean, if that was on Fox, I'd be stoked. But Roy McDonald and Tyrone Woodley is the co-main event. Honestly, that would have been a pay-per-view opener back in the day. They've got fucking Andrei Arlovsky on this card, man. It's just
And
like,
people would be clowning the hell out of Bellator if they signed Arlovsky at
oh
this point.
yeah. And
But
Ryan Jimmo is opening the pay-per-view, man. I mean, I love the robot, and he's had some entertaining moments, but it hasn't been that long ago that I could watch Ryan Jimmo on Access TV on Friday night
fighting
for
to a
free.
near draw with Sokaju, who everyone was laughing at Bellator for, oh my God, Bellator. Yeah, well, Jimmo's
Yeah,
fighting for the UFC, and that almost was like a draw. I mean, it was like a no winner in that fight, MFC. So,
yeah,
and on
yeah,
top of that, like McDonald and Woodley it's a relevant scrap, but man, you never know. I've been impressed with Woodley lately. He's not the land prey guy that he was oft.
yeah. He's got a little bit more to him. He reminds me kind of Rashad Evans. He's adding more tools to the arsenal and getting more aggressive. But at the same time, I mean, that fight, Roy McDonald is going fully in the other direction. He's gone from being this scary, crazy Canadian kid to just being GSP Jr. in the worst possible sense of cautiousness and boring. Anyway, we'll shit all over that card next week. So let's call it a night. And
Remember when we started and I was all chipper and positive and cheerleadery and all
yeah,
that?
it's kind of like you know, I don't want to sit here and celebrate your
You
descent
do.
into cynicism, but I do. You know, it's kind of sweet to see.
Sif Nate turned me to the dark side. And like I said, who knows? Maybe I'm just grouchy tonight. Maybe it's just a phase that will pass. But
Yeah. Well, you know, that'll happen. Anyway, adios, MMA aficionados. Thanks, Dallas. I'm not going to do a bathrobe review for this shit show. You already heard what I thought about it. We'll be back next week with all the usual fixins. Eugene will have Knuckle Up on Monday. We'll do Care Don't Care hopefully on Tuesday. Vivisection on Wednesday. And then 6th round after the fights on UFC 174. So take it easy, Dallas. We'll see you next time.